it'll never be the same because our brother's not here. DMX, you know, rest in peace. You know, we formed like a brotherhood. I didn't have to see him. I didn't have to call him. He didn't have to call me. When we saw each other though, it was that.
Right there.
It was that. It was beyond.
Okay, I see what's really good. You're trying to eliminate the competition. You know, because at first you retire, you know, then get me off the label. Now you back rapping again. Okay.
Jay and Beyoncé. And they dropped the same day as Nas. The Nas have some type of glitch problem where Tidal wouldn't release his album for at least 24 hours.
Nas is finally letting it all out, and what he's saying has been whispered in the industry for years. He's not just talking rivalry, he's calling Jay-Z and Beyoncé ruthless. According to Nas, when these two feel threatened, they don't just compete, they undercut, and he's naming names. One of their biggest targets, DMX.
Everybody knew DMX and Jay-Z had tension, but most people thought it was just typical rap competitiveness, until DMX started dropping hints that the real story was way deeper. Back when DMX was still dropping #1 albums like clockwork, there was a sudden shift. He was gearing up for his 6th project, momentum was high, fans were hyped, and then, out of nowhere, everything just started falling apart. Delays, changes, miscommunication, everything that could stall a rollout happened.
We work around the same time, and then the time.
They said Stillmatic came out December 18th. They said Jay released Unplugged. Then they said Street Disciple November 30th. Then Collision Course. Nas's greatest hits, American Gangster. Nasir, Everything Is Love. The Lost Tapes, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Lion King.
Now that's where it got stupid with the Lion King soundtrack. The Lion King soundtrack is when it gets kind of.
And guess who had just taken over as president of Def Jam at the exact same time? Jay-Z. Now on the surface, that looked like a power move. One legend passing the torch to another. But behind the scenes, it was something else entirely. DMX himself later said it flat out. He believed Jay didn't want to go head-to-head. Not because he couldn't, but because X still had the power to outsell him. So instead of a fair matchup, things got pushed, paused, and buried until the moment had passed. And that was when X realized something chilling. This wasn't just competition. It was quiet suppression. The kind of move you don't expect from a peer, especially one who claims it's all love. But X wasn't the type to stay quiet. He said it out loud, even when others wouldn't. And that's what made him different. But as wild as that was, what happened next made the pattern even clearer.
A competitive thing, but it was big love. He was so competitive with me. I never met a human being more competitive with me, like ever, not even my big brother.
If DMX was the first to speak up, Nas was the one who connected all the dots. And when he finally said it out loud, everything just made sense. See, Nas had always been on his own path. Respected, legendary, but never quite mainstream in the same polished way Jay-Z was. Still, whenever Nas dropped an album, somehow, someway, Jay would drop something too. Not a month later, not casually. We're talking the same week, sometimes the very next day. It happened when Nas released Stillmatic. Boom, Jay's MTV Unplugged came out.
What happened was, you know, like I said, I had the crazy track record, Def Jam, everything was good. You know, I go to do the 6th album, and, you know,
Jay-Z became president.
Yeah. You know, when he first got the job, he hit me with the call like, yo, dog, inmates is running the building, like, yo, you good? Finish the album, shoot the video. So what happened? Niggas go on vacation and, you know, we don't know. What you mean you don't know? How do you listen to a whole album, pick a single, shoot a video, then don't know?
Then, when Nas dropped Street's Disciple, Jay magically linked up with Linkin Park and dropped Collision Course. And it didn't stop. In 2007, Nas released a greatest hits project. Jay followed with American Gangster. And just when you think it might be coincidence, fast forward to 2018. Nas finally drops Nasir, a Kanye-produced album fans had been waiting on for years, and the very next day, Jay and Beyoncé drop Everything Is Love. Not just the music, but a full-blown cinematic music video shot in the freaking Louvre in Paris. That's not just bad timing. That's a calculated checkmate. Nas didn't even have a fair shot at the spotlight. And the wildest part, he never tried to start beef. He wasn't throwing shots. He was just making music. But over and over again, he found himself swallowed by these perfectly timed massive drops that conveniently snatched the headlines. Coincidence? Not likely. Especially when the same thing kept happening again and again and again.
He was really good. You're trying to eliminate the competition, you know, because at first you retire, you know, then get me off the label. Now you're back rapping again. Okay. It's all good. It's all good.
I don't think one man could destroy another man's life. It's ultimately in your own decisions. You know, I had a lot of issues. Like I said, legal issues at the time. And, you know, my mind wasn't where I'm at now today. Like, I used to have questions like why every time my album dropped, Jay would drop right on top of me. He wouldn't let me breathe or right before me. Like, I was always close, and I never understood that every single album that I dropped, Jay dropped right on top of me. And it was like, damn, like to have in-house competition at that magnitude was crazy. Jay already the boss, but I always thought that, like, let me breathe.
Now here's where things go from strategic to straight up untouchable. Because when Jay moves, he doesn't move alone. He moves with Beyoncé, and that changes the entire game. See, every time Jay-Z makes one of these perfectly timed surprise drops, it's rarely just him anymore. It's Beyoncé too. And let's be real, once she's involved, the internet stops. The headlines shift. The attention, gone. Doesn't matter who else dropped an album that week, or how long they spent building hype. Once a Jay and Bae project hits, it's lights out. And Nas, like a lot of people, started to notice the same pattern. That every time he had a big moment on the way, Beyoncé would somehow be part of the next day distraction. Not directly against him, of course. It's never that obvious.
Z and Cameron, 106 in Park. What was going through your mind in that interview?
Nobody told me he was coming. Pause. So when I'm sitting there thinking I'm getting my moment on 106 in Park, talking about my shit and how my shit is doing well, and he comes out the back, and I'm like, it's like, what's going on? So I'm sitting there just trying to be as cool as I can, because, you know, this is my time to be on 106 in Park and talk about my shit. But like you said, I don't even remember what you said, but obviously it turned into his album.
So we heard you're working on another album. Can you tell us about it? What's going on?
Blueprint 2, The Gift and the Curse.
Oh, on my time, man. Like I said, I didn't know he was there. If I knew he was there, then, you know, we would have vibed it out. But it was more like a surprise. That's kind of probably what my face was. It wasn't more of disgust. It was more of a, what's going on?
But it worked. Every single time. And because Beyoncé's image is so flawless, so powerful, so widely adored, nobody even questions the strategy. In fact, trying to say anything critical about Jay suddenly feels like you're criticizing her too. And that's a line most folks won't cross. Nas even said it himself. Jay hides behind that image. When there's backlash, controversy, or shade being thrown, Beyoncé's shine softens the blow. It's like a shield made of Grammys, elegance, and unshakable loyalty from fans. You can't touch that. And Jay knows it. That's what makes it so smart, and so frustrating for anyone caught in the crossfire. Because how do you call out the game when it's wrapped in perfection? You can't. Or at least most won't. But there were a few who dared to try.
Valentino giving me style. That's not what I'm going to do. Yeah, I could have put up movies. I could have showed the R. Kelly video that everybody's talking about, made fun of it, and said, yo, Jay's hanging out. When Jay and I was in there doing Best of Both Worlds, you can't tell me Jay didn't see a 14-year-old girl come in the studio and sit on R. Kelly's lap. No. You can't tell me, you want to sit here and tell me that working on that album, that he ain't never seen a 14-year-old girl?
By now, it's clear that Jay-Z doesn't just compete, he controls the room. And if you thought the album timing was slick, wait till you hear how he's popped up in real time to shift the spotlight. Let's start with Beanie Siegel. Beanie was one of the few from Rockefeller who had real potential to stand on his own. Every time he had something major about to drop, Jay somehow released a project right around it. Coincidence? Maybe once. But over and over? That's strategy. And then there's Cameron. This one's wild. Cam had a live interview lined up on 106 in Park to talk about his album, his moment, his shine. But out of nowhere, Jay walks onto the set mid-show, completely unannounced. And suddenly, it wasn't Cam's moment anymore. The crowd flipped, the cameras shifted, and just like that, the spotlight was gone.
My belief is that anybody who's worked with him and been in his cipher has seen it go down.
Brother needs help, and I pray for him. But if I sit there and did an album about women with him, I'm definitely maybe indulgent. He had to be indulgent for 14.
Look, when Jay signed his contract, The big one was with Beyonce. When he signed that contract, the marriage contract, he got trophies. Now those fucking trophies, trophies came rolling in, buddy. He started getting Grammys left and right, man. I mean, look, listen, if you look at his career,
Wow. You're gonna let him say that? Jay was getting Grammys.
He had one.
Exactly.
He had one.
And he ain't show up.
No, he has like 20 now.
Hold on.
He had like 18 since he been down. Look, he had one, bro. Hard Knock Life.
Hold on. You're not wrong.
At the same time, he got some shit. He started drinking. His pictures with him like fucking things the cup.
Wait a minute. So you're saying the success is derived from the marriage?
I've absolutely been treated differently.
The accolades.
Because he's no longer viewed as what, like a street or gangster rapper. Now he's viewed as a businessman, entrepreneur, family man.
And the biggest ones because of the position Beyonce's.
Oh wow! So that's the deal he signed, huh?
Yeah, that's the deal. Like, the other ones didn't count as much as that one did.
No argument, no warning, just a smooth takeover. And you can't call it beef because it's subtle. It's not a diss track, it's not direct. It's presence. Jay has mastered the art of quietly smothering his competition without ever raising his voice. He doesn't have to. He just appears, and the energy changes. And what's wild is that none of these moments got called out in real time. Because again, who's gonna question it when the industry praises Jay like he's untouchable? Who's going to say something when every time he makes a move, it's framed like a genius play? But some people couldn't stay silent forever. And that brings us to the part Jay probably wishes nobody would ever bring up.
Their kids even have Grammys. Like, they don't sing yet. They don't sing. Right. They don't rap yet. And they already have Grammys and shit. So it's like they give them this trophy so we secure that they're coming.
So here's where things start getting uncomfortable, because this next part isn't just about music. It's about what Jay-Z didn't say, and why that silence hit differently. Years ago, when the rumors around R. Kelly were already swirling heavy, Nas pulled up to a radio interview and just said it. Jay knew what was going on. He had to. They worked too closely for him not to notice the red flags. But instead of stepping back or speaking out, Jay doubled down and kept the collabs going. To Nas, that wasn't just questionable, it was calculated. Because while others distanced themselves, Jay stayed locked in, protecting the brand, protecting the bag. And here's the twist that made people do a double take. Years later, when the public heat hit its peak, Jay didn't make a statement. He made a move. He quietly helped fund the very documentary that played a major role in ending R. Kelly's run. That's right, he went from partner to behind-the-scenes ally of the exposé. On paper, it looked like growth, like accountability. But to those paying attention, it felt more like a cleanup operation, a rebrand. Jay-Z flipped the whole narrative without ever addressing his past silence directly. Suddenly, he was the mature mogul, the family man, the visionary businessman. And once again, Beyoncé's image was right there beside him, making the whole thing look spotless. But not everyone bought it. In fact, a few voices started speaking up, and they weren't pulling any punches.
My brother DMX, it's an honor to be here tonight. At the same time, it's a sad day. It's a glorious day. We stood outside the Tunnel nightclub about to shoot a scene, and he looked at me and tears in his eyes because he knew about the journey he was about to embark on, becoming a hip-hop icon. I want to say my condolences to my brother DMX family, to all his beautiful kids, to Yonkers, to Rough Riders, Swiss Beats, D, Y, Eve, Locks, the whole family, Drag On, everybody. I said my piece, love.
You know it's serious when someone like 50 Cent starts talking, because he's one of the few artists who truly doesn't care whose toes he steps on. And when it came to Jay-Z, he had some bold things to say. In a couple of interviews that flew under the radar but hit hard, 50 straight up said that Jay's success, especially when it comes to awards and mainstream recognition, might owe more to who he married than what he's made. According to 50, the marriage wasn't just a love story, it was a strategy. He hinted that once Jay locked in with Beyoncé, the respect, the Grammy wins, the business deals, they all skyrocketed. Not slowly, not organically, instantly. And if you track the timeline, it lines up almost too perfectly. Jay had always been respected, but once he was Mr. Beyoncé, he wasn't just a rapper, he became an icon, a brain, a corporate darling. And that's what made him almost impossible to criticize. Because even if people had questions about his moves, even if fans noticed the pattern, no one wanted to be the one to say it out loud. No one. Except people like 50, DMX, and Nas. They weren't buying the clean image. They weren't afraid to say, hold up, something doesn't add up here. Because while everyone else was playing along, these guys were seeing the pattern play out from the inside. And at the center of it all, standing quietly in control, was Jay-Z, making moves that didn't just win him the game, but rewrote the rules entirely. Here's the thing. DMX and Nas were never industry favorites in the polished, camera-ready way Jay-Z became. They weren't trying to be squeaky clean or business moguls. They were raw, honest, and a little unpredictable. And maybe that's exactly why they were able to spot the game being played so clearly. While others stayed quiet, waiting for deals or protecting relationships, X and Nas spoke up, without a filter. DMX called out Jay's tactics while they were still both on the same label, even if it meant getting sidelined. And Hawes? He didn't just throw shots in music, he broke it all down, plain as day, in interviews. He talked about the weird album timing, the silent power plays, the invisible ceiling that always seemed to drop whenever he tried to climb. And through it all, he never acted like a victim. He just told the truth. Same with DMX. Even in his final years, he never changed his tune. He said what he saw and let the chips fall where they may. When X passed away, Nas didn't just lose a friend. He lost one of the only people in the industry who truly understood what it meant to stand your ground in a world full of smoke and mirrors. These two weren't just rappers, they were truth tellers. And they were willing to risk the perks of silence just to say what needed to be said. That kind of honesty? It's rare in any industry, but especially in one where image is everything and silence is often rewarded. Still, they chose the harder road. And now that we're looking back, their words hit even harder, because everything they said is still playing out today. So here's the real question. Was Jay-Z just playing the game smarter than everyone else? Or was he quietly rewriting the rules to make sure no one else could win? Did Beyoncé's presence just make it easier to pull off? Or was it the secret weapon that kept the spotlight locked in place? And how many artists had their moment stolen before they even realized what was happening? Look, nobody's denying Jay's talent, his hustle, or what he's built. But when the same pattern keeps showing up, albums dropping back-to-back, interviews hijacked, rivals quietly pushed aside, it's hard not to ask what's really going on behind the scenes. Maybe DMX and Nas weren't just venting, maybe they were leaving us a blueprint for how this industry really works. Now the question is, are we ready to listen? If this opened your eyes or made you rethink what you thought you knew, hit that like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And if you're ready for more stories that peel back the curtain on the music industry's biggest secrets, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell. There's way more where this came from. And trust me, it only gets deeper from here.